it's your ability to respond to a situation, right? So I think it's very important to accept our responsibility and not just say, this is not working, the system is not right. The system might not be right, but what is my responsibility to change that system?
Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
Welcome to the Dream Big and Think Different podcast, where we inspire, impact, and empower.
Progress is impossible if you always do things the way you have always done things.
It's time to dream big. Here's your host, Dr. Sachin Maskey.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dream Big and Think Different podcast, where our mission is to inspire, impact, and empower millions of people. I'm your host, Dr. Sachin Maskey, and today we have a very special, another dreamer, Dr. Pukar Malla, all the way from Nepal, and who is also my brother-in-law, by the way, has a very extraordinary and inspiring story that we all need to hear and learn. I'm very honored and privileged and very excited today to have him in our show. And, he's all the way from Nepal right now. So welcome to the show, Dr. Pukar Malla.
Thank you so much for having me. Namaskar, everyone.
Thank you. So let's get started. I wanted to quickly introduce formally his go through his bio, and we'll get started with our questions. So I would like to say Pukar Malla was born and raised in Nepal. He's striving for an enterprising Nepal where every individual has opportunity for a prosperous future. He's a co-founder and the chairperson of Government's Lab, which conducts researches, influence public policy, strengthen the government system to advocate evidence-based policymaking in Nepal. He's the founder and chairperson of Daito, which is Nepal-based social enterprise that nurtures leaders who embraces their self-responsibilities and collectively transform societal changes into opportunity through entrepreneurship and government's innovation. He's also the founder and executive coach as Nepal Leadership Academy, which nurtures leadership in the youth and public leaders for promoting inclusive growth in Nepal. As a senior research fellow at Harvard Kennedy School, he has investigated and piloted leadership and development framework to accelerate innovation in developing nation. As as a Lang Senior Fellow at Swarthmore College, he has examined and piloted economic governance innovation in Nepal to bolster policy leadership capacity of municipal governments and accelerate local economic development. He has also worked in the World Bank and in prior engineering career, he led a design at AMD, Silicon Graphics, and Silicon Valley startup and secured two US patents. He received a bachelor's degree from Swarthmore College, which focuses on engineering and economics. He spent 3 years in Cornell University, where he attend his PhD degree in electrical engineering with minor in business management. He earned his MPA from Harvard Kennedy School. As elected student president, he also led a Harvard graduate student government, the representative student body of Harvard School graduate and professional schools. So today this is a long bio, extensive bio, but I really wanted to hear people to know about this. And today we're going to focus on basically leadership and innovation. Again, welcome Pukar Malla to the show. I'm really, again, an honor. Above all, he's also my brother-in-law, and he's right now in Nepal, and I'm very excited to this show today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so now the first question I always ask my show in my show is, who is Pukar Malla and why he is in this world?
I think Pukar Malla is a dreamer, is a doer, is a change maker who is trying to understand and improve the world that lives in himself
Hmm.
and the world that is outside, right? So I'm trying to understand who I am, and in that process, I'm also trying to contribute to the world. Um, I think my inner calling, the reason why I'm in this world, I think, I sort of look at all the things that I've done, is probably to enable others to understand and realize their inner callings.
Hmm.
At this point in my life, I'm very passionate about issues around um, economic justice, equity, and development. So I'm in Nepal, and through the various outfits that I'm engaged in, I'm trying to support youth and women to achieve their prosperous futures.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's amazing, And what I really wanted to tell people that one of the reason I'm actually very inspired what he has done so far, and one of the reason I'm doing right now is basically, making impact and empower people, which I have learned from you, uh, and I
Thank you.
want people to basically hear more about it. So let's get back to your. I want to start from your childhood. Going back to your just think. My question is like, what was your childhood dream when you were around, like, I don't know how old, but what was your dream at that point?
I think, as a child, if we are talking about like what do you want to become, in the future, then my dream was at that point to become a cardiologist,
Wow.
a doctor. My grandfather had passed away because of a heart attack. So when I was growing up, it was also sort of like an aspiration of my
Hmm.
parents, much like many South Asian parents. They want their kids to become doctors and engineers. But I wanted to become a cardiologist. But I've taken a different path because, especially during my high school days, I realized that I wanted to broaden my learning horizon, go outside of Nepal, go outside of South Asia, and be more engaged in this world of social innovation and change, which is also very much possible through becoming a doctor. But I realized for myself, I think the world of social change became more exciting.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I was just thinking about those, thing, like when we are like a child, we have so many like dreams, and and what happens when you grow up, a lot of people, external factors put some obstacles and try to stop you from dreaming. And I'm so like interested to know from your perspective, and you've been kind of when I look into your journey, since I know you for a while now, I see that you have been very persistent what you're doing for almost more than a decade now. And I really want to appreciate that what you do and what you're doing for people in Nepal, and that's a big thing, and so again, going back to a childhood, your dream and all that. I know you told me just now you're going to be a cardiologist, and most of the time that was the dream for you from your parents or other people that you want to be. But you started changing your own destiny or whatever you did so far. Go back to your childhood again, like like how were you like thinking at that time? And I'm pretty much sure you had your mindset pretty much when you were in St. Xavier's college, I mean school, for example. You were the captain
Yeah,
there, I believe. So I wanted to hear a perspective. What was your like motivation at that time too?
that's interesting. I was I was sort of like very very sure I wanted to be a doctor, and so in high school I took biology and um, chemistry, all of this. But what was also becoming clear when I was in my high school, in my 9th and 10th grade,
Hmm.
when I was in St. Xavier's School, or in my uh, 11th and 12th grades, what was becoming clear was I was also very interested in issues around justice, right? And this sort of like
Hmm.
came to me because when I was a kid, I was small, I was short,
Hmm.
and I was thin, I was small, I was studious,
Hmm.
right? And so, um, I mean, in high school, when I was in an all boys high school, I often felt very marginalized.
Mm-hmm.
There have were instances where I felt bullied.
Mm.
So I used to ask myself, why me, and what could I do about it? Right?
Right.
This is not right.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so this is where I began to realize that I have to do something more than what I am already doing,
Okay.
which is studying, to be able to take care of myself. So that's how it all began.
Okay.
So I began to do more theater
Mm-hmm.
so that I could express myself and I could become whoever I wanted to be in that play. So I could be a beggar, I could be the king, I could be a soldier, I could be whoever, right?
Absolutely.
So I began doing many plays. I began doing Shakespeare plays,
Okay.
and that led to then my interest in social service. I began to think about, well, it's not just about taking care of myself. How do I support others to take care of themselves? And so one thing led to another, and here we are.
Interesting. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. So everyone has their own story. So I like to hear from you. So after that, you went to school in Kathmandu, and you went to basically. When did you started thinking about coming abroad, and why did you choose United States?
Around the time that I finished high school, it was very clear that I wanted to go abroad, right? And in fact, that was one of the reasons why I sort of veered away from the line of medicine, because at that time, around late 90s,
Hmm.
if you wanted to be a doctor, you stayed in Nepal or you stayed in South Asia, you studied somewhere,
Right.
and I wanted to go outside of Nepal.
Hmm.
I wanted to go outside of South Asia.
Right.
And in my high school that was a norm. So I mean I also thought this is possible. So this is when I realized that if I went outside of Nepal, I would be exposed to new ways of learning, new learning, and I'd
Hmm.
probably have that emotional and intellectual freedom to be able
Hmm.
to sort of to find who I am and what I want to do in my life, right? So that's how I decided in late 90s to go to the US.
Okay. So sounds good. So you came to the United States in 1998, I believe, and then I
Yes.
guess I want to hear more about your story in the U.S. How you ended up in all these prestigious colleges here, Swarthmore. I was lucky actually to be part of your graduation, Harvard and Cornell.
Yeah.
It was one of the amazing thing I have seen here. Even though I didn't go to college and university in the U.S., but I want to hear from you your journey, like your struggles basically on those days.
When I was in US, uh, as an immigrant, what we want to do is, yes, the focus is on, we come there to learn and be in these different academic institutions,
Hmm.
but it's also important that, for me, it was also important that, in addition to education, I was also learning from professional engagements, right? So I wanted to work in the US for some time before returning. I always knew I wanted to come back to Nepal, but before coming back, I mean, returning, I wanted to, learn from professional work environments.
Hmm.
So this is where I went to all these different institutions. In the beginning, to be very honest, I wanted to do theater and engineering.
Okay.
When I went to Swarthmore, I wanted to do theater and engineering. But doing theater at that point in time, this was 1998, wasn't going to be that easy.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, I did do different plays even in college, but I focused more on engineering, economics,
Right.
and and then I worked. I mean, in different high tech companies
Right.
for almost a decade. So I did my doctorate is in electrical engineering, is in designing wireless chips, so which is very much different from what I do now, right? I worked in with different high tech companies in Silicon Valley, California. But as I was doing that, now obviously, as an immigrant to all of this, it's not easy because you don't have the networks, you don't know all the
Yeah.
people. You work hard, and US is this beautiful place where the harder you work, and the
Hmm.
more passionate you are, you have that ladder
Hmm.
to rising. So that's good.
Definitely.
But I also began to realize that I began to realize a void,
Hmm.
right? So I was achieving all these different milestones that I had set for myself in terms of colleges, in terms of the places I worked, um, uh, patents, all these things. But I began to realize I'm still not happy.
Hmm.
There's something that's still missing, and I began to realize that I was happiest when I was doing things that were close to doing things for the Nepali community in the US
Hmm.
or in Nepal. So I began to realize that perhaps I was happier doing things that were more aligned with my identity as a Nepali,
Hmm.
or identity as a person from the developing world, right?
Hmm.
So this is where I realized that it was not enough that I worked on inventions and technologies. It was important that I turned those technologies into innovations that
Hmm.
made a difference in the world, especially the developing world. And so then I decided to go back to school again and
Hmm.
study public administration. Um, so it was a different world for me because I was, sort of
Sure.
trained to be an engineer, and so I had to relearn so many different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but learned a lot in the US.
Sure. So I just I wanted to just kind of continue this conversation because I want to know exactly like at what point of, I mean, I know you wanted to go back to Nepal, but I guess you went to the Harvard and did your master in public administration. And I guess I always ask you, I don't know, you remember our comment, I always ask you, when are you going back? When are you going back? And what, like, at what point of time that led you, you're like, exactly, I'm going to go back to Nepal and do this and that, And yeah, I want to just hear from you. What point of your life
Ah,
you actually like made a decision?
I knew I wanted to come back to Nepal the day I left Nepal for the US, right?
Okay.
I knew that. But it's one thing to want to do something, it's another thing to make efforts
Right.
towards making that happen, right? Those are two different things.
Hmm.
Knowing and working on it are two different things. So I began working on it when I began realizing that void,
Right.
that I'm not happy enough just being an engineer.
Absolutely.
I need to do something else. So this is when I began to engage with Nepali community in the US.
Right.
I began to organize youth. I began to raise funds. I began to contribute to Nepal's development in different ways.
Hmm.
The moment when I actually decided that it was now time to
Hmm.
return was when the earthquake hit Nepal in 2015.
Hmm.
Remember, that was a very very difficult moment in Nepal's history. Um, and I had started a bunch of activities in Nepal, in promoting entrepreneurs, in supporting youth to conduct policy research for government. So I'd begun to do a few things in Nepal,
Hmm.
but I realized that you know this earthquake shook the country, and I am so far away from the country, and I'm not able to do much.
Hmm.
And this sort of like pent up, emotion of wanting to do something
Hmm.
just sort of like grew in a way where I realized it was just time, and it wasn't just about me at that point though, right?
Right.
Because I was married, and it was also about my spouse, so it was also about making sure that Prativa was also ready. And thankfully, I think we manifested each other in that we were always looking for someone that was very serious about Nepal, returning to Nepal and doing something there. So
Hmm.
she also was feeling very similarly.
Okay.
Very similarly, she was feeling like, it's now time to go back, and it just aligned. And
Sure.
2015,
So wow.
we decided it was time.
Yeah, I that's interesting. And now it's been almost how many years now? We are in 2023. It's a
Yeah.
so I came back to Nepal, met you last time. I remember we met together, and I came to your office, Daito. So now we want to hear more about what you have done like in Nepal from day one, and how you build this beautiful organization helping people in Nepal. Your long term vision. What do you want to do?
In Nepal, what I'm working on essentially through the different institutions, Daitwa is an NGO, Governance Lab is a think tank, and Nepal Leadership Academy is a leadership nonprofit, and then there is Nepal Rising in the US, which is an NGO there.
Hmm.
So through all of these things, the core idea is to think about and work towards um, a prosperous Nepal, which is marked with equity, equality, and inclusion, of course. So I want to work on economic development, but to get to that,
Hmm.
what I'm realizing is that it's so important to bring community and government together.
Okay.
So a lot of the time, social development work, world, sort of engages just the social actors and not enough government. And a lot of the times, people that are in the government or that have a lot of authority, they sort of operate here,
Hmm.
but it's not connected with the community, right? So
Right.
my work in Nepal to achieve that sort of prosperous future is to create a virtuous loop between the community and the government, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. And one of the two important challenges that I'm working on. One is employment,
Okay.
because youth employment is a critical issue in the country. We have almost about 2,000 plus young Nepalis leaving the country every day.
Wow.
2,000.
That's a
2,000 Nepalis leaving the country every day, right?
yeah.
That's a very alarming number, right?
Absolutely.
And of them, we have a very dire situation where about every day, anywhere between 3 to 5 coffins arrive in the country.
Oh. Okay. Wow.
Coffins of people that have died
Hmm.
working in atrocious work conditions outside of Nepal,
Mm.
right? So, so this is a very serious issue. Why did these young people leave the country?
Hmm.
Many of us left the country to work in those atrocious work environments because we didn't see hope here,
Hmm.
because we couldn't find employment, or we couldn't find employment that had dignity of labor.
Hmm.
So youth employment is a very important challenge, and I'm working on that. And another very big challenge in the country is around equity. And this is one of the very important reasons why we have federalism in the country.
Right.
We have federalism in the country so that we can manage our diversity. There's more decentralization, right? And there's more inclusion in the country. So equity, whether it's from a gender standpoint or equity for marginalized groups, it's an extremely important area in Nepal, right? So these are the two pieces: youth employment and equity. These are two important issues that I'm working on.
Hmm.
And to do this, I'm trying to do two things. One, I'm trying to build capacity in youth and women in rural Nepal to create jobs.
Okay.
So not expect somebody to create jobs. Not expect that, so all of a sudden government will do A, B, and C, and there'll be a big manufacturing company, and that will create employment for them.
Right.
I'm working on, an accelerator program that enables rural youth and women to grow their enterprises, to gain more access to market, to gain more access to banks, investment, so that they can create jobs. So that's something I'm working on. I'm also working on, enabling and supporting the government to think about and create evidence-based policies, and use those policies that are built on research to make policy decisions. So those are two things that I'm working on.
Sure.
It's not easy.
Hmm.
It's not easy, uh, because you said at the beginning, innovation, right? It's not easy to innovate
Absolutely.
when the system is not ready.
Hmm.
The system is not ready. If I go to rural Nepal and tell young people there, oh, don't go abroad, stay in the country,
Hmm.
and and turn your land into productive source of resources, money, right? It's not easy to do that, because the system is built differently. It's also not easy to convince the government to, very religiously leverage, utilize research and evidence to make policy decisions. Systems are not built this way. So what I'm trying to do is very exciting,
Hmm.
but also there are many challenges, because I'm working on not just innovating, but also trying to, sort of build the system and
Absolutely.
bring different actors together, build ecosystems so that, um, the change that I want to see in the country around employment and equity actually happens.
Yeah. So that's amazing. That's a very very inspiring thing you're doing for so that I guess the reason I want to do the interview today is to definitely hear from you what you're doing and tell people the story that so that they can be part of this journey too. And if they're wanting to make changes in other people's life, if they I always believe in collaboration and some of fashion we all need to
Mm.
contribute each other's talents and hopefully make a change in somebody else's life. So I know that you just
Yeah.
mentioned a couple of challenges in Nepal, and I was born and raised in Nepal, and I know the one of the reasons I came to the United States, and right now is one of the challenges I faced myself was security, one of the most
Mm.
important. Like there was a war going on at that time, 2004. I don't even remember this, but
Mm.
yeah, it was a very sad. Like everyone is killing and everyone is dying, and then I thought to myself, what should I
Yeah.
do? And I came here. One of the reasons was security, and you went back in 2015 in the middle of the earthquake, and I was like, wow, that's very and you've been there and doing all this. So my question to you in regards to that is who and what inspires you and drives you to be productive every
Mm.
day?
It's a very deep question. Um, I get very inspired by people that have humility, that have integrity and service mindset.
Hmm.
I get really inspired by people that, you know, are trying to create change in the world, but they are trying to do it in so simple and pure ways. They're doing it not because they want to be, you know, global stars. They want to, gain a lot of power. They're doing it because, they really care about the change, and so there's a lot of selflessness in it, right?
Hmm.
I'm so blessed that, whether it is at home or in my workplace or in Nepal, I meet so many people that, are trying to, do justice, right? So, uh, and in terms of like what inspires me, what keeps me going, what fuels me, right? What drives me,
Hmm.
it is, the work that I'm doing. I realize now when I look back, it's been more than a decade. It's creating change in the lives of people,
Absolutely.
right? So I often get a call, or somebody says it out in the public, or somebody writes to me and says, "Thank you so much
Hmm.
that I learned this and I'm doing this and it's working," right? And there are like different stories of how some of the rural women that we supported have really scaled up their businesses
Sure.
and are not just doing well for themselves, they've gone up the value chain and they're enabling other women to become entrepreneurs. And the issues around equity and employment,
Hmm.
they're addressing it themselves,
Hmm.
right? And I hear stories of our policy change makers who are doing amazing things. I remember one of our young fellows who said, "I want to become the youngest prime minister of the country." And these people are now, some of them are in politics,
Hmm.
some of them are inside the government, some of them have become civil servants. So
Wow.
I think I get very driven by seeing the fruits of labor,
Absolutely.
but I also get very inspired by hope. I think I get very inspired by hope in what Nepali youth can do. Nepal is a demographically young country.
Right.
It's a demographically young country. It's a different story that these youth are marginalized today,
Hmm.
but there's so much of potential in young people.
Absolutely.
Today, we are seeing a lot of young people get into Nepali politics,
Hmm.
which is great, and that was so needed. But I think we will see a lot of young people in economic leadership, political leadership, social leadership, right? And there's just so much potential. I think if they don't, then in 2 decades from now, we know that Nepal is going to become an aging nation or AZ nation.
Hmm.
That is happening. Nepal is going to go on this journey of aging process in about less 7 to 8 years.
Hmm.
In about 2.5 decades, it will become an AZ nation
Right.
where the average age will be, more than 40. Right now, the average age is about 23, 24, median age.
Right.
So So I think there's a lot of hope in young people, and that also drives me. So I'm like, okay, there is hope, and I must work on leveraging this hope to bring about change.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, definitely. That's good to hear from you, and definitely that will drive everyone. Hope, and you said a couple of things: humility, integrity, and service. That's definitely very good. I wanted to ask you in regards to that innovation and leadership. Right, we talk about it. I know you've been doing this for a while now, and how do you actually define and leadership and innovation, and what are your messages to youth in Nepal and around the world?
I think sort of these words have become very popular, especially among young people around the world, right?
Hmm.
Innovation, leadership, right? These are very popular words. They're very loaded words too in the developing world, and so I think it's important to sort of go to the fundamentals of these words. Innovation to me is about doing something new.
Yeah.
So there is newness involved. Whether that newness leads to a new product or it's a process based innovation, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Innovation doesn't need to, I mean, it can be a very context based innovation, right? So I was just talking about women entrepreneurs. Some of our entrepreneurs, what they're doing is not new to the world. It's not new to Nepal, but it's new to that municipality that they're working in. That's innovation as well.
Absolutely.
And innovation is hard because you're trying something that people haven't done, and you're doing it for the first time.
And it is risky too.
So it's risky. It's risky because you especially for young people, you're spending the prime of your life when you could be doing something else on innovation, right?
Right.
So innovation is risky. Innovation can be can result in losses. Some of these losses are real. You actually lose money or time, and some of these losses are perceived.
Hmm.
People think that there's loss involved, but they are not seeing the bigger picture. Now, leadership is about creating that environment for innovation to happen. Leadership is about enabling others to achieve shared purpose in times of uncertainty, right? So leadership is really about how, in the context of innovation, it's about how do we enable these young people or these innovators to do something new. And oftentimes, and the link is between innovation and leadership, I think, is that leadership is about enabling. If you are an innovator and if you want to exercise leadership, you should be thinking about how do I enable others who are going to undergo losses because of my innovation to overcome them, right? So like for instance, if I am thinking about myself, if I'm going to go to a municipality and tell people that they should become entrepreneurs and they should, create jobs, the loss for them is not going abroad, which is a safer route, right? I mean, this is a riskier route. So I have to be able to enable them to
Right.
be able to manage those losses, because I cannot bear those losses for them, right? It's not, I mean, I should not, be giving them money month after month to do their enterprises. It needs to be a sustainable route. So that's sort of the connection. And I think this is why my message to young people in Nepal and across the world is to take these words very seriously. We want to innovate, we want to do something new, but when we try to do that, it's not just, just having an idea is not enough. It's important to think about the context in which you're going to apply that new idea, and you have to be very empathetic and respectful of that context, of that environment where you're trying to innovate. And if you really want to, innovate, then you should also think about going this extra mile of not just being an innovator, but also being a leader who enables your teams and who enables the people that you work with to be able to work together and achieve that shared purpose.
Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that message. Really, really inspiring and beautiful. I wanted to just announce everyone or listening, whoever, that our nonprofit actually, the Dhanayaka Foundation, have partnered with Daito in Nepal, and we've been doing some work in Nepal together and to help people in Nepal. I just want to hear from you, Dr. Malla, about like how we doing with how many, like how we're impacting lives, and briefly like tell a little bit about the women empowerment program so that people can know.
Thank you to the Dhana Yoga Foundation for the support in two municipalities, Galkot and Tilotoma municipalities. We have been leveraging your support to enable women entrepreneurs, right? I mean, one of the big challenges in in a place like Nepal is, what talked about it, equity and equality.
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of work that has happened in Nepal around social empowerment and on political empowerment, and we need more of that. Certainly need more of that, right? All the powers to everyone that works on them. But at this point, I think honest and truest form of empowerment is probably economic empowerment.
Absolutely.
And economic empowerment of women would enable them to then, to not just do well for themselves, but others as well. And so this is where we are collaborating. And through our collaboration, we've been able to support many women in these two municipalities who have now turned some of their innovative ideas mostly in agricultural sector, some in tourism, but mostly in the agricultural sector, to try out new things. And people that were wondering, who am I and how am I going to move forward in my life, are now enabling other women to answer those same questions, and they're enabling others to advance in their lives. So this way, gender-based violence or social exclusion, all these issues in the developing world, sort of indirectly or directly also get addressed when women are economically empowered. So thank you to the Dhanayuga Foundation for your support.
No, thank you actually for Daito doing this. One of the like in a very challenging in the work like you're doing and going to remote areas in Nepal. First of all, and changing the whole thing there, supporting the families. It's an honor to be part of this journey. The one thing I like about it, what you're doing is not like when we make a donation. A lot of time we, what a nonprofit does is like they actually give the fish and don't teach how to fish, right? There's a difference between the mindset. So what
Mhm.
you're doing is exactly
Yeah.
creating the environment to be self-sustainable and all. That's a very powerful thing you're doing. So I really appreciate you and your team to doing this. Um, so a couple of more questions I have for you. So before the end of the show, and believe it or not, we're towards the end of the show, and I would like to ask you about what is your dream now?
My dream, I think about it in two ways, right? So one is like, I wanna scale up the work that I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanna see how this can go to all seven provinces of Nepal,
Okay.
all 753 municipalities of Nepal, right? And it's not like Daitwa needs to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else can do it. I just want to make sure that we are deploying innovative models of job creation, of equity in municipalities, right? So that's something I want to do, and I dream of a nation where young people are in leadership positions,
Mm-hmm.
women are in leadership positions, right? And so, but as I do this, I'm also, so that's like one way of thinking about my work and scaling that. But I also think about not just Daitwa as an organization, but Nepal as a nation,
Mm-hmm.
or for that matter, I'm not just my identity is not just that of a Nepali. I'm also a citizen of the world.
Yeah.
I'm a global citizen as well, right? I mean, I spent a lot of time in the US learning, and now I'm back. So I also think about a world where there's more trust and collaboration between a country like Nepal and rest of the world. So this is where I dream of the world being very proud of Nepal,
Mm-hmm.
the world being very proud of what we are able to achieve, and so that there is cross pollination of ideas. We're learning from each other, so there is an honest form of south south learning, and there's north south learning, right? uh, that's what I dream of now.
Oh, thank you so much. You are doing amazing work, and this is something, we're gonna a long run. I see a lot of things happening, and I wish you a lot of success and what you have done so far. With that, I would like to ask you one more question, couple of more questions, and well, next question is, what is the biggest win in your life so far, and how you define success?
The way I define success is, you know, I think success is becoming a better version of you,
Hmm.
right? And that you is unique to you.
Absolutely.
It's just, two people are different. When we compare each other, when we compare the successes of each other, that is where the issue comes. If you just think about where you are in your life, who you really want to be, and you ask yourself, am I becoming that person? And how far have I become that person? That is success to me.
Hmm.
And if we when we look at success in that line, then maybe a person who maybe this mother who just took care of the family is a very successful person,
Hmm.
right? And maybe this person that changed the shape of the country is a very successful person. So I think success is just becoming a better version of yourself. And if you think about it that way, then you find joy in simple things,
Yeah.
you know And that's how, that's another way I keep myself sort of like happy, because what I'm trying to do in the country is I'm trying to fight the systems,
Hmm.
but at all times I have to maintain that sense of joy and gratefulness, right?
Absolutely.
Because there are going to be really gloomy days as well. So in terms of sort of the win, my biggest win, I think I think I am on a journey, right? I know my purpose, and I'm working on that purpose every day. I mean, of course, if I were to think back and I can say, here is what I've achieved, here are the institutions that I've created, here are so many people that I've benefited from. That's all there. But for me, my biggest win is the fact that I am on this journey of becoming a better version of myself by pursuing my passion. And I'm surrounded with, my family and friends and supporters who believe in me.
Hmm.
It's not easy, right? I mean, one of the big things that I've learned after having come back to Nepal is, just having this idea and sort of having that CV doesn't cut it. You have to gain the trust of your family, of others, and you have to do things that make sense for that context. So that sense of humility is so important. And I think so for me, a very important win is to have that support, trust, and love of people that surround me.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think you practice what you preach. I've seen you in person a lot of times. I've gone to many places with you together. And I know you have whatever you said today is real. And I've felt that myself when I'm around with you. Meaning,
Thank you.
I guess it's important, to tell what I feel about you. And I really appreciate, whatever you're doing. And again, I wish you good luck. But guess what? We have
Thank you.
the last question for today. We're towards the end of the show. And the question is where people can find you, and what is the one thing you want to share today and share your wisdom to the listener?
So people can find me in LinkedIn. If you just search for Pukar Malla, you'll find me in LinkedIn.
Mhm.
I've become more active. I wasn't, but I have now become more active in LinkedIn. I'm also very active in Facebook.
Mhm.
I need to do more on the other platforms of social media, not so much now. I've started my own sort of podcast, so
Absolutely.
it's called Podspective by Daito Avian. So these are three places that you can find me. There's a lot more to be done in terms of that one key lesson of life, or what I would have want to share. I don't know if there's one, but I think I'm very moved by what sort of Gandhi said, right? Which is, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Hmm.
And for me, I realize that if we expect others to do A, B, and C, but we don't do your share, right? Responsibility is response and ability. It's your ability to respond to a situation, right? So I think it's very important to accept our responsibility and not just say, this is not working, the system is not right.
Hmm.
The system might not be right, but what is my responsibility to change that system? And so this is where I think it's important to be the change that we want to see in the world. But to be that change, it's extremely important to keep that fire
Hmm.
alive.
Hmm.
Very important to keep that fire alive, because when you're fighting for systemic change, the system will fight you and try to douse that fire that lives inside you, right?
Absolutely.
So it's so important to protect that passion, that integrity, that humility, that service mindset. It's so important to protect that pureness. Um, And we must do that because the change that we want to see is more important than we. The change is much more important. It's not about the individual, it's about the change, right?
Mhm.
And so it's very important to keep that fire alive. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
that's what I have to say.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom. And I really, honestly speaking, I have written down a lot of notes today for myself to learn from you. I have learned so much and learning again from you every
Thank you.
day. Inspiring work you have been doing. Everyone listening or watching, I would really appreciate, you can reach out to him and be a part of the change for the Nepal and community around the world. Thank you again, everyone, whoever is watching or listening, to please subscribe and like and share this episode to your friends and family. And looking forward to see you again next time. Thank you very much and namaste.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Dream Big and Think Different. We hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to subscribe to our show so you don't miss any gold nuggets. And we'd appreciate it if you could rate and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, and other platforms. Until next time.